Of course, the rock and roll was all last week. Appreciate all the incredible feedback we had on the many, many rock and roll interviews. I'll get those back out maybe next summer. All-Star Game week, a good week to take a little time off. I know this guy took a little time off, as did I. He went to the beach. I went to the beach. Our tans are back, and we're going to need that, a little base tan for running around on the back fields in Owings Mills beginning next Thursday. Luke Jones joins us here, our WNST insider for all things Orioles and Ravens. And, Luke, as much as we thought the Ravens were done for a little while, that Friday afternoon period where Ozzie had to go back to work, Justin Tucker's running around at sandwich shops with his wife and his kid, and we're all wondering. I thought the whole thing was very curious on his agents, from that standpoint of saying, if they don't sign, he won't sign. That's a type of thing that really, I find it to be a little bit irritable as a fan and unnecessary from an agent standpoint. But in the end, they found a way to get it done 45 minutes before the deadline on Friday, as opposed to the Ray Rice deal a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, the Ray Rice thing came down to the final 10 minutes or so. In fact, I remember being hunkered down at the Ravens facility in Owings Mills and hadn't heard anything yet. Everyone was trying to work the phones and figure out what was going to happen, and suddenly we actually saw Ray Rice get in his car and leave right around 4 o'clock, shaking hands with everybody and everything. So that was kind of an inside look at that. But you're right. With the Tucker thing, hey, it got done. Most of that stuff you block out as just noise, negotiating ploys. Now, and I know you made the comment, and I wrote about it at WNST.net, Ozzie Newsome has rarely taken kindly to those types of tactics that are media-driven, with what Robert Roach had to say about Tucker being disillusioned, about him not wanting to negotiate, which, by the way, the Ravens could have franchised him again next year. So, it's easy for him to say that. Doesn't mean he would have hit the open market in March. But at the end of the day, all along, I thought that this deal was going to be based on the framework that was laid out by the Patriots and Stephen Gostkowski last summer, which was 4 years, $17.2 million, and I think it was $10.1 million guaranteed. Well, Justin Tucker didn't get quite as much total money. He gets 16.8, but he did get more guaranteed money at 10.8 million. So, deadlines always drive these things. We know that. You mentioned Ray Rice. Terrell Suggs was a deadline deal in 2009. Haloti Ngata was a deadline deal in 2011 as far as franchise players. So, the Ravens have a history of this. When they use the franchise tag, almost all the time, it means a long-term deal at some point for that player that's been tagged. Justin Tucker, no different. I had to chuckle a little bit about the ultimatum and everything because, hey, at the end of the day, as great as he is at his job, as much value as he does have, he is a kicker, which is not like a quarterback. It's not like a rush end. It's not like a star defensive tackle. But he's proven his worth. He's proven his value over the last 4 years, and the Ravens are very much pleased to have him for the next 4 years locked up, kicking for them late in games. And in the case of, as it was in 2015, 3 quote-unquote walk-off wins for the Ravens, of which they only had 5 wins on the season, so it does speak to what kind of player he's been for them.
The urgency to get a long-term deal done with a guy you can franchise, you want the franchise tag back to use it again. You might need to use it on whoever. Brandon Williams, could be anybody, right, at some point down the line. I found it interesting that Ozzie did want to get this done with a kicker. I think Justin Tucker's a special kicker. Don't get me wrong. They'll lose games if they don't have a kicker of that ilk and certainly of that distance, and a guy who's been as good as anyone we've had. And Ozzie has lived through the post-Matt Stover era, as we all have, right?
He has, and I think, it's interesting. I was trying to think what comparison I would use as far as having a really good kicker, what value that brings to your team. And it's clearly valuable, don't get me wrong, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of having a really good closer in baseball. It's really, really important if you have a good team. Now, if you're a lousy team, having a great closer doesn't do much for you. If you're a lousy team, having a good kicker is not going to make you all that much better, but it is important if you have all the other pieces in place. And I think that's the one thing that is a little bit of a question with the Ravens as far as how many great football players do they have on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball? Well, we'll find out.
Well, he's been their MVP a couple of right.
Well, and that says a lot about where the Ravens have been.
Right.
Not quite being where they were, say, in the earlier years of the John Harbaugh era. Certainly with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, and then Hall of Fame caliber players. But I think it's clear. I wrote this early last week. The Ravens were in a good position here because they didn't have to get a long-term deal done with Justin Tucker. They had the cap room to say, we have almost $13 million in cap space with him having a $4.6 million cap figure, which is what he would have played under with the franchise tag. So, they didn't have a ton of urgency that they had to get a deal done, but you'd like to get it done. You don't want to be paying your kicker $4.572 million this year and then being right back in the same spot next year. It does give you a little bit of extra cap space. It keeps your kicker happy. Hopefully he has a clear mind now going into 2016. The one issue with him that we did talk about last year is he needs to be a little bit better from beyond 50 yards. And I'm not talking when the Ravens give him a 59-yard field goal to try right before halftime. I'm talking about that 50, 51, 52-yard range where he did have a few misses last year, a few more than you'd like to see from a guy that you're paying to be the best kicker in the league. So, I think now he can put all of that aside. All the talk about being disillusioned. Well, if I'm disillusioned and then someone gives me a $10.9 million guaranteed, I'm feeling pretty good. So,
well, I saw the other night, David Price took the ball at Fenway Park, or excuse me, Yankee Stadium for the Red Sox. He's making $1 million a start, right? Justin Tucker's making $250,000 a game, right?
Sure.
That's an amazing amount of money for a kicker, right? When you really think about, when you put it in those terms, that he's making $250,000 every Sunday in the NFL, that's a serious amount of money for a kicker, right?
No, that's why he needs to be really, really good. There can't be any drop off here. As great as the Ravens got in terms of value from him in 2012 and 2013, and to maybe a slightly lesser degree the last 2 years, but still very much good, fair value. Now he is an expensive kicker, so he better be continue to be, if not the best, certainly one of the best 3 or 4 kickers in the league over the course of this deal. If not, then it turns out to be not a very good contract. So, and I think the Ravens have experienced plenty of this over the last 3 or 4 years. One of the reasons that they've struggled is some of the long-term, more lucrative deals, and not that this is lucrative relative to what you've paid some other players on this football team, but it's lucrative for a kicker. So, but they've had issues with guys not living up to contracts, whether it's Eugene Monroe or Ladarius Webb or any number of guys that you could sit here and debate. But they need Tucker to continue to be one of the best, and when he has been that, they've been able to squeeze out a couple extra wins that they might not have had otherwise. But at the same time, it is when you're paying your kicker a lot. As I said, that's kind of a luxury item a little bit more. Need to have enough really good football players on either side of the ball for it to really matter in the end. And that's where I think there's a little more question about this team. As it's clear the Ravens are in transition a little bit. They have some older players that they're really counting on. They have some younger guys that they're waiting to step up and become the next great Ravens in the history of this franchise. And until we really see what that looks like, I've said to a lot of people this year as far as expectations, kind of feel like there's a little bit of a blindfold as far as what this team's really going to look like because of some of the injuries, some of these veteran players coming back from injury, and still waiting on some younger guys to really step forward. But as I said, when you have a guy like Justin Tucker, if it's close, really late in the game, you have a chance to either tie a game or go ahead, and that's something that, as you pointed out, in the post-Matt Stover era, that was a little hairy for a few years, and ultimately, I don't need to say what happened in Foxborough.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was a long, sad drive home that night, but I got through that. The parade and the whole New Orleans thing got me through that period of time. Luke Jones joining us here. You can, of course, email Luke anytime, luke@WNST.net. Also, Baltimore Luke out on Twitter. He will be in Owings Mills beginning next week. I guess we thought there was going to be downtime. One of the neat parts, I think, in the modern era is following social media and seeing Steve Smith with his boy at a Cubs game game over the weekend, or seeing Brandon Williams singing Justin Bieber songs in his car on the way to a Justin Bieber concert. It's been quiet, though, right? No arrests, no problems for the most part. We've had a couple of dirty P tests here in the offseason as well that have cost a couple of players. But by and large, they're going to get to training camp, hopefully with Suggs with 2 legs. And I know he had some social media and some HBO value over the weekend as well. But Smith, Suggs, Pitta, Perryman, all of these questions, Flacco, all these guys coming back from injuries. This is going to be a more interesting training camp on a day-by-day basis than maybe some others are in the other 31 teams.
No, I totally agree with you on that, and I don't even know if it's going to be training camp. I mean, I don't know how much we're going to see Steve Smith in training camp.
Sure.
He's already dismissed the real need for him to play in the preseason. John Harbaugh has even said that, and it's not to be cavalier that it's not important. It's that they're trying to do what's best for him physically. He had a real any Achilles injury is bad. I think anyone knows that. Anyone who's experienced that, or anyone who's seen a complete host of athletes over the years have that injury in any sport. I mean, that's a really difficult injury to come back from. For every Terrell Suggs who came back almost miraculously in 2012, you have 10 guys who really struggle to get back and to be what they were before. It doesn't mean that they can't be what they were before, but it's really a challenge. And I know, Steve Smith's not one to complain about something like that, but this has been something that's been a challenge for him. I know last week he posted a video on his Twitter account of him running not quite full speed, but very, very close to it, as he pointed out. But in training camp, certainly Joe Flacco, by everything we understand, he's going to be back for the first day, plan to be back for the first day. So we'll see how he looks. But guys like Steve Smith and Terrell Suggs, and not knowing what's going to happen with Brashad Perriman with this non-ACL injury, no matter how you slice it. I mean, something happened to his knee, even if it wasn't a catastrophic knee injury. So until he's back, we're going to have the same questions that we had last year. So, it is going to be a really interesting training camp. And, something else to add to that, this is a team coming off of a 5-11 season. I think we saw, even during the spring, and a few veteran players even spoke about this, it was a much more physically demanding off-season program and organized team activities. And I'm not even talking about the rookies being in pads and Harbaugh and the Ravens getting slapped for that. But just the
it was a really expensive 5 minutes, wasn't it?
Oh, totally. we rehashed that quite a bit, so I think everyone's aware of that. But just the expectations in general were a little bit higher, a little more rigorous from a physical standpoint, and I do wonder if that's going to carry over. I'll say this, just from the very at first blush, just looking at the schedule. The Ravens have a bunch of 9 a.m. practices scheduled in Owings Mills, which, this will be, they've been practicing at their facility for training camp since 2011. This will be the first time I can recall them consistently practicing at 9 a.m. every morning. And, I don't know what's behind that. Maybe it's a new sleep study that John Harbaugh and his staff.
Well, that would have to be part of it, right? I mean, because Harbaugh takes that stuff real seriously.
Oh, he does, but at the same time, I do wonder if it's a mentality of, hey, we're going to get out of bed early. We're going to hit the practice field early. We're going to work our butts off. And, maybe there's something to that.
Well, there wasn't a Billick practice in all those years that didn't happen at 8:30, 8:45 in the morning. That's the way the team rolled when they did two-a-days.
Yeah, well, and like I said, maybe, last year there was a little more of a rolling schedule. They had practices at all different times. They had some at 9, but they also would have some at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or they'd practice at 3 p.m. So, maybe they found that they didn't like the results they had with that, and maybe they're going to go with a more consistent, more rigorous training camp. Who knows? But there are plenty of questions about this football team right now. I think with the additions that they made, there's definitely upside. Don't get me wrong, but this was a team that had its issues before just a silly list of injuries set in midway through the season, where we were talking about Jimmy Clausen and Ryan Mallett and Matt Schaub playing quarterback and not knowing who was playing receiver. And being down to
Jimmy Clausen played quarterback. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, but at
almost forgot about that.
Oh, sure. Well, I think a lot of Ravens fans are trying to forget what the second half of last year looked like.
Hey, my wife spent the whole football season in the hospital, so it's all a big blur to me too, right?
Well, that puts it in perspective certainly for you. But I think for this team, there is upside, but you need some young players to really take not just steps forward, but significant steps forward. You need some of these veterans that you're counting on, whether it's a Suggs, whether it's a Steve Smith, whether it's an Elvis Dumerville. You need guys like that to continue to play at a high level. If they have drop-off, which honestly, that's kind of a realistic outlook at it, if they have some drop-off of some of the injuries and just age setting in, and then some of these young guys don't step forward as much as you need, then you're probably going to, you're going to see a team that's probably going to struggle to make the playoffs, to be in that race. I don't think they're going to be terrible, but there are a lot of question marks about this football team, and that's working under the assumption that Joe Flacco comes back and doesn't miss a beat with the knee. So, if that's not the case, then all bets are off as far as what this year looked like. But I think for a team that did go 5-11, there was a lot of talk in the spring about guys that were frankly embarrassed. I remember Timmy Jernigan saying that every day he would go to the facility or every day he was working out on his own, the first thing he would think about as he walked into the building was, we went 5-11 last year. That's completely unacceptable. And it is for what the standards have been around here over the last 2 decades, save for a handful of years here and there. It was far below the line, to borrow a phrase from John Harbaugh, and we'll see.
By the way, that's my favorite line that Harbaugh uses, that you use, that I use. I'm going to be using that all year.
Well, we've talked about it quite a bit with the Orioles starting pitching being below the line.
That's below the line, yes.
But I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this team bounces back. They're going to be better. I would be very surprised if they're 5-11 or.
Well, I hope they don't win 4 games, right?
But at the same time, I'm also not ready to just blindly proclaim them to be an 11 or 12 win football team either. I think there are some things we're going to need to see, and honestly, I'm not sure we're going to see all those things before even the regular season sets in. So it's going to be very, very interesting, but very, very soon, as Buck Showalter would say, our curiosity will begin to be satisfied starting next week. Veterans Report July 27th and first full squad workout July 28th. We are right around the corner from, as you pointed out, those sunny, hot days in Owings Mills. And, my suntan's looking pretty good right now. Hopefully that'll help me out as we get into late July and August.
I'm fully on record as saying Terrell Suggs is probably my least favorite Raven of all time. I mean, he's just not my cup of tea. I know his little act over in the corner and the movies and the gangster stuff and the, liking all the action dramas, and thinks of himself as a movie executive and a producer and James Bond and all that. He did make his way on the HBO on Sunday night, and I know you watched.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned you not being a big fan. Well, Spencer Strasmore, who was The Rock's character on Ballers, not a big fan of Terrell Suggs either, as they got into a little scrap during the season premiere of Ballers, which I know a lot of football fans, it's over the top. I get it. But I also enjoy it, and I'm also a big fan of The Rock. So, but Terrell Suggs, a guest star appearance on that, which was interesting because in the show he actually had the little, I don't know what they call the little walking gurney that you have that that you can not be on crutches, but you're not putting weight on a leg. I think they started filming season 2 of Ballers back in November, I want to say it was. So Terrell Suggs at that point clearly was long gone in terms of from a football standpoint with the injury on opening day last year. But was interesting to see Suggs, and it was definitely a TV MA performance between The Rock and Terrell Suggs. Colorful language and all of that. And hey, we were wondering what Terrell Suggs was doing from the time he got injured in September last year. Well, we have at least a little piece of that puzzle.
Colorful language from Terrell Suggs, who had a porn link on his Twitter for 5 years. Who knew?
Didn't have to worry about the 8-second delay or anything like that being on HBO. So it was he got to be himself. So I guess I don't know if I'd say it was great acting as much as he just had to show up and kind of be T-Sizzle. But, yeah, it was interesting to see him and The Rock's character getting a little bit of a fight.
I can't believe The Rock's on HBO, but that's okay. Hey, man, I liked him better in the wrestling ring, and I know you did as well. Luke Jones can be reached, Luke at WNST.net. He's also Baltimore Luke out on Twitter. And are you ready for, you need another week down here because once football starts, it doesn't stop, right?
Oh, it's busiest time of the year for us, and hey, we'll gladly take it, though. I mean, it's one thing, I can recall 2010, 2011, where focus on baseball, and long before that. But for me personally, you get to training camp, and then the Orioles kind of become the back burner story. Oh, that's not really the case now. I mean, you got a first place club, and
what's it? 21 years now the Ravens have broken for camp. This is only the second time where we think, at least, you still got 10 days left. The Orioles could be a second place team by the time they blow the whistle. But this would be the second time in 21 years the Orioles would be in first place. Well, 97 and 2 years ago, right?
97, 2014,
right.
And
third time, okay.
And looking like a good chance this year. I mean, we'll see how it plays out. But hey, I mean, the last 5 years it's been more of a juggling act for guys like me, and I will gladly accept that assignment. Very relevant, important baseball, and the Ravens, I think a very important year for this franchise on a lot of levels. I mean, as much as we've talked about, John Harbaugh and the run he's going on, he'll now be going into his 9th year, which will equal Brian Billick. I mean, he's had a great run, but another non-playoff season this year. I'm not saying that the axe falls, but I think it gets a lot hotter, so to speak, for John Harbaugh and company if another non-playoff season. So big year for the Ravens, I think, in a lot of ways.
Luke can be reached at Luke at WNST.net. I am Nasty at WNST.net. Together, we're in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault. If you miss anything, the morning newspaper is there for you each and every morning. Brought to you by Planet Fitness. It comes to your email inbox free of charge. And last but never least, we're always on the breaking news. Breaking news happens first on your mobile device. All brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5. It is our best service, the WNST Tech Service. Meanwhile, you can find us on Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. Anywhere you are, we are. WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.